Hello and welcome to the channel. While we wait for season 11 to air, I thought it'd be fun to do some non-reaction Doctor Who videos. So recently I decided to rank every episode of every season of NuWho. Today I'd like to share with you my season 1 episode rankings. I've got to admit, for season 1 it was incredibly easy to pick a first place and incredibly easy to pick a last place. The ones in between, however, were very difficult. May have to nitpick quite seriously. Also, for this video and for the subsequent videos, two-parters will be treated as one episode. So for season 1, that leaves us with 10. In 10th place, we have The Aliens of London and World War III. There's lots of good things about this episode. Harriet Jones, played by Penelope Wilton, brilliant. I'd like to have seen more exploration of the theme of the Doctor delivering Rose late or overdue and all the implications of that. And the Slovene themselves were, although rubbery, they were really well designed. That baby chibi face with those dark dead eyes, and just the sheer frame of them with those huge claws, brilliant in design. But then we get the fart jokes, then we get that pig alien, and we get Mickey Smith, who somehow is able to initiate a missile strike on 10 Downing Street successfully. I don't even want to think about the implications of that scene. It just took me out of it. It just took me out of the moment completely, and for that reason, Aliens of London and World War III is my 10th place. At number 9, The End of the World. Actually, a quite brilliantly conceived episode, which, given that it was a very early episode, did give us a glimpse of the sort of diversity that we was going to expect of aliens in this show. All of the aliens were absolutely brilliant, aside from Cassandra. Now, I loved the element of, this was the end of the world, but it was treated as a mundane and ordinary thing, not important. In fact, it was only a background to the actual events of this episode. And I loved that. I loved that that subject was treated with such mundaneness and such ordinariness. But Cassandra, I'm sorry, but Cassandra, I can't even work out how she can even exist, even in a sci-fi show. Nothing about Cassandra makes any sense, and although Zoe Wanamaker is a brilliant actress, she couldn't bring life to this very, very ill-conceived villain. As a consequence, this makes my 9th place. At number 8, this is where I'm going to get a little bit of hate, I think, because it's Father's Day. And I know some of you will disagree and say that this episode deserves to be in a higher position. I'm not going to argue with you. It's just that the Reapers were a good idea, but their effectiveness in this episode was just so much diminished by later episodes. I know that's unfair, but I have to nitpick. And I don't know, it does hold some rewatch value for me now, but not much. It's a brilliant idea, and it wasn't executed badly, but this was a season of some very, very, very good episodes, being Christopher Eccleston's only season. So this episode for me just fell short of the mark. At number 7 is Boomtown. The Return of the Slovene. or at least one of them, Blonde. And a brilliantly conceived episode. We have this background of Blonde trying to, yet again, reduce the earth to molten ore so that she can sell it or something, but this time she's in Cardiff and it's a nuclear power plant that she's designed to deliberately fail. But the scenes where the Doctor and Blonde are in the restaurant and he's questioning her morality while she at the same time is questioning his, there's some brilliant moments in that. It does have a lot of rewatch value, and I don't think this episode is given the credit it deserves. And given that it's number 7 on my list, I don't think I'm giving it the credit it deserves either. It was a very, very close one whether this was going to be number 6 or number 7, but number 6, The Long Game. Another interesting episode looking at the effects of mass media and propaganda. Simon Pegg is delicious as the editor, and the Jagrafess is okay as an alien. It's a little bit weird. I'm glad that it's a one-time villain. The Jagrafess is brilliantly conceived, but just ultimately ineffective. It's just ineffective as an alien baddie. Of course, it was revealed later on that this wasn't just an alien baddie. This was just the front behind the real invaders. And I love that as well. I love the fact that the viewers at the time really had no idea what the title meant until right at the end of the season. But as a standalone episode, it stands at number 6. At number 5, we have Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways. Slap bang in the middle of the ranking, and with good reason, I think, as well. This was a second episode which I can't find much fault with. Unfortunately, it was following a first episode that I can't find much good with. The reality TV was nonsensical to the Doctor Who canon. In fact, it is probably about as nonsensical to the Doctor Who canon as possible to be. Everything after the game show bit was okay, but not great. And the final scene where Rose gets shot and then we see the Daleks in full force, and yeah, that was good. That was good. Maybe I was being a bit harsh on it, but the game show bit just drags it down so much. It's, as I said, it doesn't make much sense that things like Big Brother and Ground Force and Weakest Link would be remembered that far into the future. And this is what I don't like about pop culture references in Doctor Who. They're necessary sometimes, but they need to be in the time that it's set. You know, they can't be anachronistic like so much of NuWho has become. Number 4, The Unquiet Dead. I think this is another episode that doesn't get the credit it deserves. And I think there's very, very little to dislike about this episode. It's a brilliant sci-fi ghost story. Simon Callow and Eve Miles were brilliant in their respective roles. The jokes, even though they were anachronistic, they worked. And Simon Callow's performance as Dickens was superb. I mean, Simon Callow is one of Britain's most eminent actors. And there is no doubt that he carried this episode. And I just love the situation that the Doctor gets in, where he reads the situation, the turn of events so wrongly. First assuming that they're malevolent, the Gelf are up to no good, and then being completely convinced and bowled over by their plea for help. And then, worse of all, persuading Gwen to actually act as a conduit for them. And then it's revealed that he's got the situation totally wrong and that they are in fact malevolent. That was just brilliant. And that early on, it was a great way of showing that the Doctor does not always get it right. And sometimes there are consequences to that wrongness, that amount of wrongness. And number 3, so I was seriously debating whether I could justify putting this episode so high in the ranking. But it's Rose. It has some dodgy bits, I will grant you that. It has a lot of wasted opportunities for, in my mind, exploring Clive's theories about who the Doctor is and getting all that misinformation and mystery before we actually find out from the Doctor actually what he is and who he is. I wish they'd explored that more and led the new viewer, as it was in fact the pilot episode, down that garden path a little bit more before the big reveal. To me, that was a wasted opportunity, as well as the misuse of Noel Clarke, a brilliant actor who just was not given the lines. But it's hardly surprising that this episode has these faults, because it is the pilot episode and it has so much work to do. It has to introduce all the characters and the concept of the show, and it did that in a brilliant way. It is a near perfect pilot episode. And for that reason, I'm putting it this high. It does have a lot of rewatch value. The story behind everything of the Nestine takeover is brilliant. And it had everything that a classic Who viewer could want. Bringing back an old classic Who enemy straight off the bat. It's brilliant. I love the first episode of Rose. I think it's one of the most perfect pilot episodes in TV, full stop. And that's why it makes number 3, but it doesn't make number 1. And it doesn't make number 2 because Dalek. Number 2. This episode is a masterclass at presenting an enemy of scary, scary proportions. It's not a masterclass in naming episodes, though. Absolutely terrible episode name. To all new viewers that have only, or had at that point only experienced NuWho, it meant nothing. And all the reveals and the surprise would still be there. But for me, for us classic Who viewers that have come into NuWho as a continuation, it held no surprises. It's unfortunate because it is a brilliant Dalek episode. It's probably the best Dalek episode of NuWho, because they portrayed such fear and such ruthlessness and scariness that it was a real hide behind the sofa episode. And they did that with one Dalek. I mean, that they created an atmosphere that wasn't, that even later episodes couldn't muster with a whole army of Daleks, and they managed to encapsulate everything that the Daleks were in that one solitary Dalek. That's why it makes my number 2. Okay, it's number 1 time. And I've got no honorary mentions because there are no other episodes. So straight on to number 1. No surprise to anyone that's been following this. It is The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances. What's not to like about this episode? There's just too many great things about these 2 episodes to even count. There's the introduction of Jack Harkness, a brilliant companion, or sometimes companion. So good, he got his own spin-off series. We have the empty child itself, and there is something primitively fearful, and I mean it's a horror trope almost, that the child ghost or the evil entity in the guise of a child. There's something primitively fearful about that image, and the way they did it in The Empty Child was just so good. And what made it even more brilliant was the fact that of the unique circumstances that led to its creation. Never can that be repeated. That empty child stands as a one-off enemy, if you call it an enemy. It's a one-off alien encounter that will never be repeated. And of course, you've got the everybody lives moment. And Christopher Eccleston just plays that with such glee. You can see the character's development on that, where he goes from a war veteran that's lived through that time war, and you know, we know this in advance, obviously, but you know, we can see the relief of that, of the stern and impenetrable exterior breaking away as he realises that just this once the university is on his side, and that he is going to get everything that everybody lives. It's truly, truly, truly wonderful. And that's why it is my all-time #1 episode for season 1. And that is it. I hope you really enjoyed listening to my views on season 1's Doctor Who. It's not a full review. I could do that, but maybe not yet. This is more practice. But if you enjoyed it, I will do a season 2 episode ranking. You just have to let me know if that is something that will be welcomed. In the meantime, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, and share this video. And until then, I thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.